But this weekend, here in London, a vigil was held outside Downing Street to demonstrate that both sides are suffering and pleading for an end to the cycle of violence. Our next guest is one of the main proponents of this peace movement. She is Robi Damelin. Her son, David, was killed by a Palestinian sniper in 2002, and instead of being consumed by hate and revenge, she devotes her life towards peace between Israelis and Palestinians. And she's joining me in the studio. Robi Damelin, welcome here face to face. We've talked to you several times since October 7th. You were in Israel when we spoke the last two times. And you do keep talking about how one must be able to still see the humanity in each other. Tell me why it was important for you to leave your country and come to this vigil that was organised by bereaved families on both sides here in London.
I thought it was very important to talk about opinions. Everybody's got an opinion. The whole world have turned into grand experts on Israel and Palestine. And I thought there might be an alternative to that, because those opinions are importing our conflict into your country and creating hatred between Jews and Muslims. And that's not what you want, really, but that's the end product. And so I spoke about maybe instead of having an opinion, you might want to find the story of one Palestinian of their loss and the story of the loss of an Israeli family now, and maybe even the story of a hostage. And instead of giving a grand opinion, you could actually tell that story. Maybe that would contribute to some compassion instead of so much hatred.
So let me ask you, were you satisfied then by how this vigil went off? Because previous ones, whether here in the US, in London, in the US, around, have some of them devolved, whether they're marches against anti-Semitism, marches for Palestinian rights. Some of them have devolved into placards and more hate and more discord. But this one was told, don't bring any placards, don't wave any flags.
There weren't any placards, there wasn't any shouting. It was very respectful of everybody. There were Christians, Muslims, and Jews, the Archbishop of Canterbury. That's extraordinary, because in these times where it's so good to feel good about yourself and march off to a demonstration with a sign that probably is so destructive. So for me, this was very different, and the lighting of lanterns was significant, because, you know, tonight is Hanukkah, and Christmas is all about light. So there is something in common, and that is light in many ways. So we all lit lanterns.
And it's so difficult to actually find that light right now. You did write in an op-ed for a British newspaper, it is perhaps a natural thing to choose a side. For Israel and Palestine since October 7th, it's the flavour of the month. And there seems to be a sort of a move to sort of declare yourself and to... I use the word tribalize, it's not a good word, but to just get into your own silos and there's no compassion and no understanding. But you still think there can be?
Oh, I think if people, the way that the Parent Circle works, the organization that I come from, is all about storytelling. Mm-hmm. And the minute that you would hear my personal story next to a Palestinian personal story, even the hardest of hearts can't not be affected by that. Mainly, the people with the grand opinions rushing around with their placards have absolutely no idea what is going on. I don't think they could find Israel on a map. And, you know, I'm just thinking about my granddaughter yesterday. In the middle, I have an app on my phone which tells me if there's going to be a rocket. So there was a rocket outside my house, and suddenly this whole fear starts to come up. Mm-hmm. And that fear is very dangerous. There's a lot of fear around Israel now, and trauma, and of course the fear of the Palestinians running away in Gaza is so horrific. I can't believe that I'm part of something that allowed that to happen. And I keep thinking about the next generation. If you were a young kid growing up in Gaza, and every 2 years there's a war, and every 2 years there are bombs, and you have no shelter, and maybe no food, and maybe no water, and you're running away. And so you have no freedom of movement and no hope. So what kind of an adult are you going to actually be? And I'm looking at the West Bank now, at the occupation, and I look at my friends who have not got freedom of movement. There's a total closure. Otherwise, I would have been here with a Palestinian partner. Can you imagine what that's like from the 7th of October? They've been more or less stuck at home. The settlers are running rampant and doing exactly what they want with very little punishment or accountability for that matter. All of this is a keg waiting to blow up. And so what I'm telling you now is that we have to work 10 times harder. And we have to work with the families that lost. Because, you know, a lot of the families that were killed down in the south were actually from the left.
Yeah.
And so I know as a mother...
The peacemakers.
Yes. And I know as a mother, I think I told you on the last program about Vivian Silva.
That's your friend who...
Yes, she was burnt to death in a cupboard. But I was so sure that she would come out and she would be one of the leaders of the peace movement. We cannot give up. There's no way that I will give up personally.
But what you're saying is incredibly brave and incredibly forward-thinking, and many say that, you know, they need to get over the current grief, to get over the situation that has so shocked, you know, them and the whole world, that they can't even talk about this kind of thing. And I say that because you yourself and your peace circle has come under, you know, quite a lot of criticism and threats from within your own community. Tell me a little bit about how
it's not
this
the community, it's the government.
Okay, so how does your talk of peace and sort of hearing the story of the other and reconciliation go down at home?
Look, we can't look at the present government as anything that would encourage the work that we're doing. It's threatening for them. We are number one on the list to destroy. Virtually, they banned us. Literally, they banned us from schools just before the war started. So we started to have dialogue meetings outside. In fact, we had one outside the house of the education minister, which was pretty naughty, but was a good idea. And we were actually starting to move towards going to the Supreme Court. For 20 years, we've been working in schools, the only Palestinian-Israeli organization that was allowed into schools. A 17-year-old kid has never heard in his life a story of a Palestinian. And so for them to meet somebody from our group who comes in and is so vulnerable and tells their personal story of loss and allows them to ask questions in a safe atmosphere, this is dangerous. I think this is incredible.
And a Palestinian, likewise, who's never heard a story of humanity around an Israeli fellow student or compatriot. And I raise that because you said you have to hear the individual stories. So your story clearly is so tragic. You lost your son. One of your partners, who we interviewed with you by satellite, he was in the West Bank, Bassem Aramin, he lost his daughter. She was killed by an Israeli soldier's bullet. I just want to play what he said, rubber bullet. I just want to play what he said in terms of understanding the other side, understanding your side.
I believe what happened is terrible. And always I said, because I have a master's degree about the Holocaust, so I have the right to talk about that. This is my hope, my faith, that the Palestinians didn't kill 6 million Israelis, and the Israelis didn't kill 6 million Palestinians yet. And there is a German ambassador in Tel Aviv, but there is an Israeli ambassador in Berlin. It means we can do it. We just need a brave leader or leaders to take us towards the future and release us from the atrocities and the very painful past.
It was so effective to hear him say that and affecting. And I just wondered what you think. I mean, where are the leaders? Because this is going to take a massive effort on leadership in your own, you know, in Israel, Palestine, and around the world.
Well, I think it's got to start. You know, we can't wait for somebody to appear. I think the work that we're doing now is vitally important. A person like Bassem is such an exceptional human being. I mean, for me, Bassem is like, it's above the conflict. He's my family by now. And he also has a sense of humor. And I must say that if you want to do this work, if you cannot laugh And by the way, laughter is kind of a bridge to somebody's heart anyway. You can't go on. And so we laugh a lot together in all this madness, you know, and I think he is an extraordinary human being. But I'm here, and there's 700 families in our group. Each one could tell you a story that would touch your heart and make an emotional breakthrough.
Do you think that, you know, talking to these, however many of the families that you know, and there are other organizations in the region that also try to work this path. Do you think that there are enough people on either side who will accept, and they have to for a peace? Israel and the Palestinians have to accept that none of them are going anywhere. They're staying, they're sharing, they have to, and that has to be the story of the future.
Well, you know, when I came to Israel in 1967, after being anti-apartheid movement, kind of jumping from the frying pan into the fire, I would say, if you would have told me then that blacks and whites would sit together in a room and not want to kill each other, I would have said you were mad.
In your own home country?
Oh, yes. And so there was a miracle. It's not a miracle that everything is now paradise. No, because people want overnight reconciliation. There's no such thing. It could never happen. But look what happened, and think of the alternative of the bloodbath that could have happened when Mandela came out of jail. So yes, I believe that things like this can happen for us. I remember when Anwar Sadat came to Israel, I was sitting with my two little boys.
The president of Egypt at the time?
Yes.
After the Yom Kippur War
Yes.
that Egypt started?
I was sitting with my two little boys, and tears were pouring down my face because I thought they wouldn't have to go to the army. And then I think of King Hussein, who came to Israel when a Jordanian shot some kids. And I remember him sitting on the floor in a house of mourning and thinking to myself, wow, if there was an election now, they would vote for him to be the next prime minister. So yes, I think things can happen overnight and a leader can come up from, but we have to do the work that we're doing as much as we can. We have to continue with the ceremony that we have every year. On Memorial Day, we have a ceremony, which of course also the government is not exactly thrilled, and every year we have to go to the High Court to get permission for the Palestinians to come. And I must say that it's quite good fun to beat the system and go to the Supreme Court. And this year, because of the democracy movement and because people suddenly realized that we were so much on the top of the list for destroying, 15,000 people came to the ceremony and 300,000 people listened online.
It'll be really interesting to know whether that group survives this terrible war right now.
We have to wait and see.
I want to ask you one thing to expand on, because you had told me in our first interview, don't forget Bedouins on October 7th, Muslims,
Yes.
came to the help of the Israeli Jewish victims who were being, you know, slaughtered. And we know that the army wasn't there in time. We know that individual IDF soldiers and former commanders just put on their uniforms and raced in their own private cars
Well,
to do what they could.
they were all busy guarding the settlers.
Tell me about the Bedouins, because it's not a story that's told of them. After you told me about it, I read it, you know, in a Tom Friedman column, also in the New York Times. So it's an important thing that happened.
It's more than important. I think that if I came from an unrecognized village and I didn't probably have a shelter, and when I heard that my neighbor was in trouble, would I immediately gather everybody around me and go to try and save lives? And would I have been shot and killed, which several Bedouin were? And would I then be taken as a hostage? Would I have made that choice? I'm not sure. And today, if you look at Rahat, this village, they have 80,000 people, maybe, and they've created this huge warehouse together with the Israelis where they are supplying things to people in need. Extraordinary things are happening. I live in Jaffa. Now, in 2021, when you interviewed us, there were terrible riots outside my house. This time, there's a committee of Palestinian Israelis and Israelis who are working together for non-violence. There's no violence.
Yeah. Robi Damelin, always inspirational. Keep up your work. It's really important.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.